Hey guys, what I'm showing you here today is what's called a light harvesting method. Basically the theory of it is the worms can sense light and heat, so you can do this out in the sun. If you do it out in the sun, just be careful. If you forget about the worms and leave them there for a while, they can quite easily get cooked. They really don't like heat. Basically the idea is you mound up little mounds of the bedding containing the worms over a table, and you leave it there for a period of time, even like just a few minutes or 5 minutes. If you've got a lot to do, you might want to get like 10, 15, 20 piles sort of thing, because by the time you start tickling through one pile and then working away around the piles, by the time you come back to the first pile it's ready to be tickled again. So what you can see there is I started with 6 piles there, and over the space of about 5 minutes I've got nearly bare worms there. Again, depending on what you're trying to do with it, you don't really need to harvest the worms completely out of bedding. I always prefer a migratory method to get the worms out of old bedding into new bedding, if that's what you're doing. I would only really light harvest to sell worms, or you know, for whatever reason, like if you were intensely breeding worms and you wanted to work out how many grams of worms or ounces, however you do it, that you're putting into a system, then you might harvest them right out to the bare flesh of the worms. So you can see here the 3 old piles and the 3 piles of bare worms there, and basically what I find is when you get down to the last sort of pile, the last few worms, you can just sort of roll them like that, and they end up separating from the rest. There's still a few worms in there, but the bulk of the worms are sort of all nestled together. So once you get down to nearly bare worms, it's quite easy to get the rest of the material out, just by rolling them over, and also, you know, sort of just helps to stir them up a bit more so they go back to the other side. So again, there's my 3 piles. 3 piles of almost bare worms. If I was selling these, I'd get them down to what I know to be a acceptable amount of bedding within the worms, and I always supply an overage in all of my orders so that I can be sure that I'm giving a fair amount of worms. And you can see these piles here. Once I flip them over, you'll see a big pile of worms all gathered up into the middle. So again, depending on how much time you had and how quickly you wanted to harvest some worms out, it'd be very easy to just grab the piles like this to get the bulk of the material out of them, and have the most of the worms all be in one area, so that you can quickly make up an order or do something like that. So that's basically the light harvesting method. Thanks very much, guys.